Hi there, welcome back. We are beginning our culmination of our discussion on fathers, fathering, and fatherhood. And we are going to jump into the issue related to family functioning and father presence and father absence. Now, strangely enough, and I'm not exactly sure where this is coming from in terms of our social functioning, but there's a lot of rhetoric out there where people are asserting, both males and females, that fathers are unnecessary, that families can go on and they can function just fine without the father being in the life of the child. And this is erroneous. For some females, the issue may be just a belief that it's not possible to have a happy, healthy relationship with the father. And so therefore, there might be some sort of pretending then that the father is unnecessary. He's inconsequential. And some males may be taking on this same line of thinking um, due to feelings of not being effective, or sometimes simply to shirk responsibility. I mean, it can be both of those things. And also, some boys grew up without a father, and so they walked away from that experience believing that they turned out just fine without a father, and so therefore a father is unnecessary. But we are going to talk about why those assumptions are incorrect and how people can start to get back on track in terms of thinking about how to facilitate the healthiest child and family functioning possible. So even if the whole family can't stay together, there are ways for fathers to be actively involved in the lives of their children, raising their children, not just drive-by visits. Okay, so one of the things that both men and women might want to think about is that families in which fathers are absent, they generally have more challenges than when fathers are present in terms of the family composition. And this is particularly the case when you are living in a patriarchal culture where male dominance, male privilege, and male lineage are highly valued and practiced. And so the United States, if that's where you are listening to this from, the United States is one of those cultures. There really aren't any strong, prominent matriarchal cultures that we know of in the United States. So would be a subculture. There really aren't any. I know a lot of people tend to believe that the African American slash black slash indigenous slash native slash descendants of slaves, whatever it is that people are calling themselves now in terms of that identity, there is a belief that that particular culture is a matriarchal culture. And it's not a matriarchal culture. It is sitting inside of the United States. There are some matrifocal dynamics in that culture, in those cultures, but it's not a matriarchal culture. Okay, so when children are raised in father absent homes in patriarchal structures, those children become doubly vulnerable because they don't have access to that male privilege that I was talking about earlier. They don't have access to the male privilege that children in father present homes have. And this is particularly a problem when you have a mother who is, in terms of demographics, she is of a race slash ethnicity or an economic status that is marginalized. Okay, so that's very important to remember. So the problem becomes compounded when the father is not in the life of the child, when the mother is also marginalized in terms of her demographic identity. Now, let me give you mothers out there something to think about right now. Um, one of the things that happens when a father is not actively raising his child, is not actively involved in the child's life, the mother then attempts to pull double duty, trying to be a mother slash father. And this results in significant maternal role strain and family strain. And in these situations, as you can imagine, the children become burdened and in father absent households, because when there's only one parent that's parenting the child, then the child then is usually expected to perform adult responsibilities for which they are developmentally ill prepared to perform. This includes things like male children being required to function like the mother's sort of quasi partner, or the little man in the house. That is not that child's role, and it's developmentally inappropriate. And so that's why it is so important to recognize the importance of the father's role in that child's life. The child is not supposed to be trying to put on the mantle of the father in the household. And additionally, children were born with two parents, and they have two parents for a reason. The two parents are required because of the uniqueness of the parents. And so just like children need their mothers, they equally need their fathers. Fathers are a must to children. They are essential to children, and they are an entitlement, which I mentioned before. And they are a basic necessity in a child's life in terms of healthy development. If you are the mother, you are not the father. You have a responsibility as a mother to do all that's in your power to make certain that the father that you choose for your child is in your child's life, unless, of course, you discover too late that this is not a good man to be fathering the child, meaning that the father is abusive to the child. And you've taken steps to make sure that the child is protected. But bar that sort of situation, the father should be in the child's life on a consistent basis. And mothers do not have a right to keep children away from their fathers based upon some fleeting whims related to the father. And so unless the child's father is incarcerated, again, or the mother found out just entirely too late that the father is in actual danger to the child's well-being, whether it's physical, psychological, spiritual, the mother has an obligation to make sure or to assist in the process of the child having regular and unfettered access to the father. The negative relationship that the mother and father have with each other, that is not the child's problem. The child didn't ask to be brought into the world. The child was brought into the world, and it is incumbent upon the parents to try their very best to provide the most productive and developmentally healthy and sound environment possible for each child that the parents choose to bring into this world. Accordingly, who a person is dating. So when parents separate, or they're not together, the issue of dating again, getting married again comes up. Those two things should have no bearing on the child's relationship with the father. This goes for both the mother and the father. Unless we're talking about a serious safety issue, who the mother is dating, who the father is dating, should have no bearing on the child having regular and consistent contact with the child's father. And this is a really hard thing for some people to embrace, but the father's unwillingness to provide for the child's basic needs should also have no bearing on the child's contact with the father. If the father is refusing to provide basic food, clothing, and shelter for the child, he's completely physically and mentally able to do so, that issue needs to be resolved through the family court system. It should not, however, dictate whether or not the child has access to both parents. And what happens is the adverse physical and psychological issues that the child is going to likely suffer due to the father's absence far outweighs any surface desires or issues the child's parents may have. And for those mothers who did not have a father present, I want you to think about this. If your own father was absent, it does not justify creating a dynamic whereby the child shares in the mother's childhood pain. If father absence was difficult for the mother should then think about how similarly difficult it is for the child to be without his or her father. Now, if you're an absent father, you have a moral and legal obligation to care for, nurture, support, guide, teach, and protect that which you created. You have an obligation to put the child's basic life needs above any of your own fleeting desires to be free and unencumbered, to be financially better off, or to be distant from the child's mother, or to pretend that the child is not yours, or to punish the child and the child's mother for the choices that you think the mother made related to creating the child. Again, the child did not ask to be here. If you are the father, you chose to be the creative force for your child's existence. You made the decision to create a child by engaging in actions that produced a child. If you were old enough to engage in actions that produced a child, you know how children come to be. Your child did not behave in such a way as to create himself or herself and force you to be a parent. This was your choice. And so again, just as with the mother, your feelings towards the child's mother should be of no consequence. And the child should not be drawn into any further parental dramas. Your issues with the mother are not the child's problem. And every effort needs to be made to assure that the child does not experience it as the child's problem. Now, I know some people think things like unemployment relieves them from the duty of parenting. But if you are the absent father, your unemployment does not relieve you from parenting. When you eat, the child should eat. When you are sheltered, the child should be sheltered. If you have clothes on your back, the child should be at least similarly clothed. And so your failure to financially provide for your child by true inability or choice does not preclude you from making yourself physically present in your child's life. If you need to walk for miles across town to visit your child due to not having other transportation, well, you need to walk. If you have access to a phone and you can call anyone else, you need to use that same phone to check on your child every single day. Because there's no legitimate thing as a paternal vacation. There's no real paternal sick time or paternal leave of absence. Fathering is a lifetime vocation. And, contrary to popular belief, it doesn't stop when the child turns 18. They don't just walk off into the sunset. They tend to hang around. Okay, so when the time comes to make legal custody determinations, fathers do not have a moral right not to fight for custody, whether we're talking about joint custody or sole custody. They do not have a moral right to not request regular visitation if they don't have custody. Fathers do not have a moral right to not take care of a child simply because they are involved with or married to a woman other than the child's mother. That is not the child's problem. And I'm going to bring this up because this becomes a bone of contention between children and their fathers. Fathers do not have a moral right to take care of some other man's child while ignoring the needs of their own child. And this often happens in a step-parent situation or when a man is dating a woman who has children, because there is a tendency for adults in relationships to focus on that person they're in the relationship with and prioritize that person. And that might include the person erroneously prioritizing a child that is not theirs when their own child is going neglected. Okay, so you do not, as a father, have a moral right to not feed your child, clothe your child, shelter your child. If a father elects not to pursue custody and not provide directly for the child, let me explain to you what child support is sometimes about. Child support, when a father elects not to be involved, is simply a payment to the mother for the father's freedom to not be bothered with caring for the child's daily needs on a consistent basis. That's what it is. And some fathers do elect to do that. But it is not in the best interest of the child to simply pay child support and walk away, in most instances. Now, as with the mother, sometimes the father grew up without a father in his life. And so it's understandable that men may feel like, I grew up without a father and I turned out okay. And they might feel like the father was voluntarily absent from their life, so therefore, they can be voluntarily absent. If you are a father and your father was voluntarily absent from your life, he was wrong. His past wrong, however, does not make your current absence right. Just as you did not deserve to be abandoned, neither do your little ones. They deserve to have you in their lives if you are at all capable of being there. Okay, so that we've gotten that out of the way, those clarifications, let's start to wrap this up. It's helpful to have some suggestions, some concrete suggestions on what to do, particularly for those fathers who are uninvolved and they're trying to figure out, okay, how do I become involved? And one of the things that some fathers may not have considered that they might want to consider is filing for custody or visitation if they haven't done so. And so they can start to prepare to become present mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And so one of the first things that a father needs to do if he's been absent is own your own issues related to parenting. If you've been absent, just acknowledge it and acknowledge that it has been detrimental to the child and take immediate action to become regularly present. Okay, your child is your immediate family and in many instances your legal next of kin. Remember that. That child is often your legal next of kin, and that has legal implications to it. And so you want to make sure that you have a steady, consistent relationship with your legal next of kin. And so one of the things you might do is just start off with a phone call to your child. Pick up the phone, dial the number, and speak to the child. And when you do this, if you've been absent for a while, just directly acknowledge that you've been absent and acknowledge the challenge that your absence has created for your child. Let them know, I know that I've been absent. I can imagine that it's been difficult in this way, and this way. And you can even allow them to tell you how it's been difficult. And don't make excuses or blame anyone else, particularly the child, for your choices. The child is not responsible for your choice to not be in the child's life. The mother is not responsible for your choice to not be in the child's life. And then you want to allow the child to express his or her feelings about you being absent and just accept it. And just endeavor to heal whatever hurt is there. Your ego cannot be the most important concern in addressing your child's pain or upset over your absence. Of course they are upset. You are one of the most important people in the child's life, and not having you present is upsetting. You may not value yourself to the point where you understand how upsetting it is, but the child sees you as extremely valuable. And so within 24 hours of listening to this, try to make contact in person with the child so that you can continue that process of healing and presence. And so if your child is too small to actively engage in phone calls or cooperative visitation, for some fathers, you can reach out to the mother and begin the same healing process. So for instance, if the child is an infant or a toddler and you can't, reach out and talk to them on the phone, make a plan to visit with the child within about 24 hours, to participate in the care of the child. You can meet with the mother out somewhere. If you are on speaking terms, you could go to the home, and you can engage in childcare. And it could be something as simple as feeding the child, providing diaper changing, maybe reading a book to the little person or rocking the little person to sleep. The child probably isn't going to care what it is you're doing. They're just going to be happy that you're there. Okay. And if the mother is refusing to allow visitation or custody exchange, that's something that fathers need to take up with their attorney. They need to seek legal assistance for that. Or they can directly contact the family court wherever they are to get some assistance regarding what you might need to do in order to facilitate that interaction with your child. Basically, children have a legal right to access to both parents, and it is the moral obligation of the parents to make sure that the child's rights and needs are protected and asserted. Okay, if you have any comments, any thoughts, any questions, you can drop them in the comment section. This concludes our series on fatherhood and fathering and being present if you have been absent. And I'm hoping and praying that this is helpful to someone, and that even if it's just one child who is helped by this, then I've done my job. Okay. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care and see you soon.